Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, this is the definitive leadership growth podcast. So we have an opportunity to visit with people that are in all different verticals of business, in all different corners of the world. And it's awesome because as I sit and have the opportunity to interview these men and women, entrepreneurs, business leaders, military background folks, we have these conversations, and it provides an opportunity for you to sort of look through a different lens and see their successes, hopefully navigate around the failures that either they've experienced or we've experienced. Some of you that are in leadership, you know how that is. Like we've hit those walls from time to time. And sometimes people don't talk about that. So we have these conversations. We have really collaborative, good conversations on the show. And today is going to be no different. I'm excited. I have Karl Pister on the show, and he runs the Coaching Group Inc. It's an executive coaching and leadership firm. He does consulting, coaching, leadership growth, leadership training. He helps people navigate the difficult conversations, which we talk about a lot on this show, is how do you have hard conversations with people? And he is a transformative leader. He's somebody that helps people grow and break out of their shell. And let's get him on the show right now. Karl, welcome to the Leadership Toolkit, man. Thank you so much for making the time to have a conversation with me and the audience today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the questions and the discussion.
Absolutely. Well, if you would do me a favor, and let's just start with, let's do the 3 to 5 minute elevator pitch. Tell everybody about you. What's your background? How did you get into management, leadership? What led you to where you are now? You're running on a global, awesome coaching company to be able to coach people in that leadership realm. So if you would share a little bit about you and where you come from.
Well, it's somewhat like the Road Less Traveled by Robert Frost. I took the road less traveled, and that made all the difference. I went to grad school. Well, leadership wise, my first leadership experience was at 12 years old at a scout camp that my grandfather was one of the directors of. And for 3 years, I spent a week learning leadership. I have the notes, my notebooks on the shelves right behind me here. And that gave me a taste of, okay, this is important stuff. My grandfather was a huge pillar in my upbringing. Fast forward, graduated with 2 degrees in behavioral sciences from Brigham Young University. But coming out of grad school, I didn't take the traditional therapy route. I went into corporate America with Aetna Life and Casualty and helping them set up their first managemental healthcare networks back in the late 80s. And I got my clinical license. I still did clinical work. But those 10 years in industry were huge because it showed me leadership, business, spreadsheets, budgets, hiring, letting people go. So it gave me a taste of that. 1994, went out on my own. My wife and I run the business. She's a silent partner. And we started doing work with companies, doing employee assistance programs, still did a lot of clinical work. The big break, Mike, came. I did a gig for a big organization out here in Portland and hit it off well with the HR director, had some time with her. That engagement ended, and then 10 years later, I get a phone call or an email from Pam, and Pam said, "Are you still doing consulting and coaching? Because I've got 2 clinic directors that aren't getting along," and they were with one of the largest healthcare organizations in the country. And from that one phone call, we now are we've done work in 8 or 9 states with over 50 organizations, and I can track everything back to that one phone call. One correction, wow. Full disclosure, we've not yet done international work, so I can't say we're a global, but I can say we're a national company.
That's awesome. So I'm curious. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, just on the personal side, like we were talking before we went live, married to a marvelous, marvelous lady for 39 years. We've got 4 children, 3 in-laws, and 8 grandchildren. So highly blessed in that area.
Yeah, families, Man, they're at the heart of everything that we do. They're
Yes.
so awesome. And we were talking, I have 3 kids. We have our first 2 granddaughters. And so it's just that's the best, because you get to hang out with them, and different rules apply when you're a grandparent compared to be. And I know my kids will listen to the show from time to time. My oldest one, especially, he's like, Dad, it's really not fair. And I'm like, well, life isn't fair. So,
Amen.
um, so I'm curious. I love 2 things that you brought up, because I think there's opportunities for leadership, and there's pieces of people's leadership journey everywhere. And I want people to hear that. The fact that you said you were 12 when you went in this scouting camp, and you said, "Hey, this is important." And there's these certain times and pinpoints in our lives of leadership, and I would encourage people, just from that tidbit, not that we need to dive way back into that, but I would encourage people listening into the show, when did you realize that leadership was important? Like, I think that's something that we don't reflect on enough. I mean, and you're saying here at 12 years old, and then probably throughout your career, but I'd pose that question to anybody. And you had something you were going to add there.
No, just absolutely to segue with what you're saying, Mike. Again, huge examples in my upbringing, especially from my grandfather. My father also working within his organization growing up. And in my church congregations, there's a lot of focus on helping youth become leaders.
Mhm.
I gave my first talk at a baptism service when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
And we had speech competitions growing up throughout, our organization, just because there's that realization that communication, good verbal communication, is huge for leadership. And then I served a 2-year church mission where I was, leading other missionaries, 100 and some, and just these, and always under the tutelage of brilliant people.
Mhm.
Never go and do it, but these men and women that gave me incredible opportunities at a very young age. And the president of our mission was former CEO of Max Factor,
Oh, wow.
Venezuela. And so, driving around Venezuela with him, just listening to his stories, he didn't say, these are leadership stories, but in retrospect, so many of them were. How to treat people, how to be a leader. I remember the very first time I went on the road with him, Mike, a quick throw myself under the bus
Yeah,
story.
I love it.
Um, I showed up in the parking lot, and he'd said, be here at 7:45. And I cruise in at 7:50. No big deal. He's leaning up against a car in the parking lot with a look that doesn't look too friendly. And I said, President, what's up? He said, you're late. And I said, well, better late than never. He said, no, Karl, with me, better never late. And it was okay. Note to self. And he wasn't a hard-nosed, unfriendly individual. He just let me know that when you lead people, you respect them.
Yeah.
And respecting is showing up in his, and something I've kept over the last 45 years since I had that opportunity. If I'm not in the room 5 minutes before it starts, I'm nervous, because I like to be there. When people come in and I'm leading the meeting, I can greet them, call them by name if I don't know them, get to know them just in that little 30, 40-second intro. And it just sets a tone. The leader's here first. I've got my stuff together, and I'm not slamming in the door, making excuses of why I'm late. It just sets a tone. And it all came from that one little interchange in a parking lot up in the mountains in the Andes of Venezuela that I will never forget.
Oh, I think it's super powerful, and I think you're spot on with, and we've all heard it said, right? If you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. If you're not, whatever I had a friend of mine on the show. Gosh, it was a year ago now, and he made the comment. He says, there's so many cliches in leadership. And he says, when you get into leadership, you realize that it's only cliche until it's not, because it's stuff that's actually real life,
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
and so I think it's very powerful that you're like, something so simple you can take and reflect on. And I agree with you, and leaders and listeners, take note. You need to be the one to set that tone. It's important when you're setting, especially when you're starting something off, you're kicking something off, whether it's a meeting at work, a project at work, whatever that thing is. It's important that you set the tone, because someone is going to set it, right? and
Yes.
and so
Yes.
let's hope it's you, because someone is going to set that tone. And if you're not there early and someone else is, what tone is being set? They're sitting there talking and going, oh man, Mike's late again, what the heck,
Yeah.
this and that, and then you get that
Mhm.
negative water cooler talk, right, and so forth.
Yes.
So I'm curious, Karl, a couple of things that I want to dive into, because one of the things actually you put in the email to me, and I think it's valuable. I don't always dive right into a question like this, but I also think that it's important based on sort of the discussion we've had. Because we always remember when we're coming up. For me in business, I remember the people that were really crappy leaders, and I go, I'm not going to do that. And I remember the ones that were really good leaders. And I've found that the really good leaders, if we asked 100 different, 100 different interviewees of leadership, hey, what are the best characteristics of leadership? You get 500 different answers, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes it's a little subjective based on where you're at in your career, how you're receiving that. But there are certain common threads that go through all leaders that are just fundamental and that are most important. And one of the things that you had said in your email, you said, I remember these key things the most. Can you dive in? If someone's looking looking for training, learning, a leader that they want to follow, what are some of those key characteristics? And the second part of the question is, are they teachable? Can you teach leadership characteristics, or is it stuff that people just know?
Wow. Two great questions. Um, so the ability to connect with people would be one of the top traits. If you don't care, and not in a warm, fuzzy, go to their birthday party type of caring, but all of us have been around leaders where we know that we're just a passing part of their agenda,
Mm,
and the smile is thin. The how are you doing, Karl, is about as shallow as it gets. And we've also been around those that when we come in the room, there's that eye contact. Mike, how are you doing? How's that grandbaby doing? And suddenly, they could say, and now, Mike, please go jump off the building. And it would be right. I'm on it. Just because they connect.
yeah.
And they connect because they're able to listen well. So good with people, caring about people, being able to listen to them, and learning to not be the first and the biggest opinion, but truly, and I'm not into consensus leadership. There's times when it's got to be top down, but I am very much a proponent of connection leadership. I've got to know my people. They've got to know my values and why those values are important to me. So, integrity, listening, caring about people, those are key aspects. And I look up here on my bookshelf here of some of the incredible books that McKinsey has put out on leadership.
Mhm.
And they just came out with one last year. It's called The Journey of Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out, where it talks about that inner journey that Mike and Karl have to know their values and what their lines in the sand are before they can lead others. Otherwise, we're just going after every, whim of the world, and then we run into the wall at high speed. Your second question is, are they teachable?
Mhm.
Um, yes, they are. Why do I hesitate there? because it goes back to my first point. If someone, and you've seen this in your leadership journey, I have in mind, where you just have people that are just curious, enthusiastic, teach me people. And
Mm-hmm.
yet they will become good leaders, because generally those are people, individuals. I hear people on the show right now saying, "Oh, but Karl, I'm an introvert. I'm not good with people." Even introverts can be good with people, because even introverts care about people. Now,
Sure.
some don't, but I may be shy, but I do care about Jane, who's in my office. And I can figure out, with good mentoring, good coaching, how to get beyond my shyness and reach out and make that relationship happen. So it's teachable, but it's got to be someone who sees the need for it and isn't seeing it as a manipulative leverage of, well, if I can be a leader, I can get the way things I want. That person will not do well as a leader.
Well, I love the way that you put that, Karl, because the thing is, like when you said it's teachable, a couple of things. We can speak and teach all we want, but if the person on the other end is not receptive to it, it doesn't matter, right? So it's
Absolutely.
the things I'm hearing you say is, yes, it's teachable, and the person receiving that has to be willing to be taught. Like they have to have a teachable mentality. The other thing, and I've heard, gosh, I wish I could remember the name. I have it right on the tip of my tongue, and I'll think of it in a minute. But where you were talking about integrity, listening, and caring, the to me, well, I'm curious. First off, the caring piece. I'm going to go backwards: caring, then listening, then integrity. The caring piece, I think, is so valuable because I've heard it said, and there's an author. Gosh, I just read his book. I'm staring at my bookshelf to try and find it now. I just read it for Og Mandino.
Yes.
He makes the
Yeah.
statement. I just couldn't think of his name. He makes the statement in more than one of his books where he says there is no replacement for genuine caring. Like you can't baffle people with your BS. And so I think that's
Mhm.
a super valuable point. I mean, and that's been said multiple times, but it's like, okay, well, Karl, if I came to you and I said, okay, well, how do I teach caring then? How do I teach somebody to listen or communicate well? How do I teach integrity? I think one of the things that we first have to take a moment and define as well, what is caring? Like, how do you define those things? Can you expand on that for me a little bit?
Absolutely. It gets down, I think one of our base theories here, Mike, is emotional intelligence.
Love it.
And some of the pillars of emotional intelligence is: one, self-awareness; two, awareness of others; authenticity; emotional reasoning; crisis leadership; and positive leadership. So let's just stay with one and two for a second.
Okay.
If I'm so wrapped up in myself and my views and my agendas and my insecurities, I will not care about Mike. I can pretend to, but if something starts heading south, I'll head back to my little cave and defend it really, really strongly. So getting myself aware, how do I come across? What are my trigger points? What do I do well at? What am I weak at? Then I can care about you. And that sounds selfish. Wow, Karl, you're saying that you have to care about yourself before others. Yeah, you do, because your cup has to be full enough to serve another person. Just yesterday, I'm on a coaching call with an incredible surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
And we were about 10 minutes into the call and something wasn't right. And I said, call him John. I said, John, could we pull off to the side for a second? Something's up. What's going on? Well, for the next 40, 50 minutes, Mike,
Wow.
we talked about something that was not related at all to what we were talking about in the first 10 minutes. But if I hadn't read the room, and I'm not saying wonderful Karl for reading the room, it was kind of like a 2x4. This guy was a different person in those first 10 minutes. and we ended up great. So that awareness of others, Karl being able to say, wow, I know Mike pretty well, but something's not clicking today. And to have, and this is a huge leadership point, to know your agenda and your purpose well enough. And I was in a meeting once in a nursing setting where we had an agenda set, and I was helping the nursing director on a project. So I wasn't leading the room. One of the participants came in, and Mike, her face was ashen. And Eric, who was leading the meeting, immediately, and it was a high gains meeting, tight agenda. We had some stuff we needed to cover. He said, I'm putting the agenda on the side. Call her Jane. Jane, what's going on? And Jane shared something that was, she won't go into details, but it was a real nasty situation she just spent the last, 3 or 4 hours in. And our entire meeting was focused on Jane, helping her get back. And the whole group, led well by this great leader, pitched in, chimed in, wrapped themselves around the situation, using their collective genius to help her navigate a really nasty setting. And I've always looked back on that saying, okay, that's reading the room at its best. Now, did he get accomplished what the meeting was supposed to happen? No. The loyalty and trust he engendered by taking, just if we ran the numbers on that, that was probably $2,000 to $3,000 meeting with all the people that were around there and their salaries for that hour.
Yeah.
But put that aside, Jane needed it. And he was probably able to recoup with a couple of good emails and, some hallway conversations. But Jane walked away absolutely, okay, this is a place I can feel confidence in. And I think as leaders, that's our whole goal.
Absolutely. Well, and here's one of the things that I want to hear. Sometimes I sit and I listen. I've joked many times. I told you before, lots of times the audience knows my head. Fortunately, you were on the screen, so I'm sitting here scribbling stuff. I've already got a page worth of notes. But the thing that I'm hearing is, fast forward, how many years ago was that for you? And you're able to sit here and share that story. And when I'm saying, okay, like we're talking about, can you teach these things? Being, caring, listening, integrity, because those are some of the key things when you're talking that creates their ability to connect with people. And it's crazy because I asked that question. You go back in the data banks, however many number of years. I didn't hear if you said a number of years. You just said it was a meeting taking place. 10 years. So yeah. The crazy thing is this. You're able to recall that and share the story on a show like this in our conversation. One of the things that demonstrates to me, and I want people to hear this, if you want to teach caring, you have to model caring. That's the best way that you're able to teach it, because even now you and I sit here and we go, okay, that's great. And I'm trying to articulate it in a way so that it's like, okay, if you're listening or watching this show, you need to get that. You need to get that piece, because that individual in that meeting at that time when Jane needed it stopped and said, here's what's important. We're going to, okay, take the agenda, crumple it up, throw it away. This is what's important. That is truly modeling caring for somebody, because they could see the individual. And so fast forward, we pick up on that as leaders, right?
There's a marvelous quote from St. Francis of Assisi. It's attributed to him. Preach the gospel always, and when necessary, use words. Let's just take gospel out
so good.
And put in leadership or any leadership value.
Yes.
And demonstrate it. Look at the people in your life. Look at the people in mine. I cannot remember my grandfather teaching me a theory. I just can remember a great point of dogging the details, making work well. He was a master craftsman, Mike. And every time we spent, and he built his own house. He amazing with woodworking. And every summer when we go to his place for 3 to 4 weeks, I'd have a woodworking project. And I had an insect collection. I said, Papa, I want to build a box for my insect collection. Well, I'm thinking in typical 10-year-old fashion, I see a lot of wood on that shelf. Nails, wood, buzzsaw, this will be done by 8:30. You know?
Sure.
Well, Grandpa was a craftsman. And Mike, I still can close my eyes, look out the window of his shop, and seeing my cousins playing baseball. And I'm in there sanding. And I'm sanding with the grain because he's saying, Karl, if it's worth making right.
Worth
And
making it well.
And I just want to go play baseball because I'm a baseball nut. Well, we didn't slap together some boxes. He made beautifully hinged, perfect boxes. And Mike, I still have them. I still have those boxes. But what they bring to my mind is sand with the grain. And Karl, you're not finishing. You're not going to play baseball until it passes my test. He wasn't a hard-nosed guy. He just knew that a 10-year-old needed to learn a work ethic that has stayed with me for decades. It's modeling. You said it so well.
Thank you. And I think that goes for all of those, listening, integrity. I'm curious, how do you, and this is just how my brain works. My audience knows this. We're going to be like, oh, hey, squirrel, let's talk about this thing for a second. But diving into that, how do you define integrity, Karl? What do you look at and you say, hey, that person has integrity? How do you determine that?
Never tell a lie. Fully transparent. And if you say you're going to do something, it's done. And if for some reason you can't, it's not after the fact that you fess up to it. It's before the fact. Mike, I know I said yesterday I could be there. Something has come up. I'm going to be an hour late. Can we reschedule, or is an hour going to work for you? Oh, but it's no big deal. I mean, Mike's a flexible guy. He's a busy guy. He can fill his schedule. No, the fact that I've said it the other night, I got a phone call. Someone in our congregation needed a visit. Oh, yeah, I'll go over tomorrow night. Not a problem. Well, tomorrow night shows up, and it's about the last thing I want to do, because I know it's going to be a 2-hour visit, and the situation's sticky. Now, would it have been okay for me to go over the next night? Yes. But it's still that, no, you said you would be there, and so you're there. Now, you may have people in your audience thinking, oh my gosh, this guy sounds so antiquated, as his horse and buggy outside his office. But those are the type of leaders I want to follow. Yeah. And it's been modeled for me. When you say it, you do it, you wrap it up, you make sure the person's happy. It just gets down to customer service.
No, I love it. And I agree with you. I think the real leadership values, like the actual values and characteristics, they are timeless. They're not going to change. Everybody wants to update things and go faster and do this and change that. And we could tweak this a little bit. No, it's like when you get down to that core of what a leader is and a person is, that's just, anyway. So, hey, before we go running off, because I got a couple more questions we want to get to it. We're already 30 minutes in. This is fantastic. Hey, also your tie's running off to the side. Just catch you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's not a noose. There we go.
So, couple of things for those of you that may be watching or listening to the show. If you want to connect with Karl, I encourage you, go to linkedin.com, look up Karl Pister. I'll spell it for you. It's KarlPister. And you can look that up on LinkedIn. Also, you can connect with him if you're interested in coaching, executive coaching, I imagine leadership retreats and workshops and all of those sorts of things to be able to develop leadership and management. Coachinggroupinc.com. It's spelled just how it sounds. COACHING group, GROUP Inc.com. It's all one word. There's no dashes, no spaces. So you can connect with Karl in those ways if that's something you're wanting to move forward more in your leadership. And just, I would encourage you to check it out for all of the things that he offers. I definitely would say connect with Karl on LinkedIn and start a conversation. So I would love to go back. I want to go back to something. We're never going to make it to the some of the things that we suggested. I'll have to have you back on the show a couple of times. I say a couple of times because I know you sent me some great ideas, and I think we really got into one question. I got off the direction, but here's something I wanted to tune in on or key on. When you were talking earlier and you said, hey, one of the ways that I got started was I had these two clinic directors that were not getting along. And I think that's one of those things. And I zoned in on that because I think as leaders, so often we do have people that don't get along. You're going to have people in business that don't get along. You're going to have two type A personalities that are just clashing and butting heads. That one wants to go this way, one wants to go this way. You're going to have, three people that work for this individual that they think it's better done a different way. And so conflict is a inevitable, I don't want to say necessary part, because in a perfect world, like there's times that we should just, hey, let's all go and everybody's moving in sync. But it is an inevitable part of business. It's an inevitable part of growth in business. And it's an inevitable part of growth as people. And so when conflict arises, I think that's something that's important for leaders to dive in and have conversations about, but it's easier to avoid that, right? It's easier to go, well, let's just kind of keep the peace. And what you said earlier, you said, hey, I got called into this because there were two directors that were not getting along. And so I want to take you back in time there. How did you start the conversation with those two? Did you pull them both into the room? Did you interview each individual? Do you recall that? And then starting there and teaching some leadership and conflict resolution. And if I'm off with how I'm framing this, you correct me by any means. Starting from that point, what's that?
You just read my mind.
I want to know what's changed in how you address conflict now.
Fortunately, early on in my career, my master's degrees are in marriage and family therapy and in social work. Gotcha. And both of those have strong instruction regarding how to help conflict resolve. So, and if any of your listeners want the go-to world-class site for information on this, it's pon.harvard.edu. Okay. P as in Paul, O as in Oscar, N as in Nancy. It's Harvard Law School's Project on Negotiation. They're the one that have produced the book, Getting to Yes, Getting Together, Getting Past No, Beyond Reason. Amazing. Highly recommended. And I still do a lot of conflict resolution work to that setting. The first thing is to pull people aside, one-on-one, get each person's past, what they past in regards to the conflict, what they see the current setting as, and where they want it to go. Do that individually, otherwise you'll have a shout fest. Mm-hmm. Then with all that, you bring them in, and then you have person A give the past with the absolute agreement that person B is not interrupting either verbally or non-verbally. And then once A has exhausted her routing, then B has a chance to again describe all of her grievances without person A interrupting or rolling eyes, etc. Once that is done, then it's where does it stand currently? And then it's okay, where do you want it to go ideally, and what will have to change in order for that to happen? And it takes a ton of time to do this well. And when you invest in that time, you see spectacular results. I'm doing a multi-party conflict resolution situation right now, interviewing, I think, 11 people. I'm 7 interviews in. And it's literally fascinating, Mike. It's playing 3-dimensional chess, trying to figure out who's where and what. but it is one of the most underemphasized leadership skills because people, I mean, how many times do we, well, John's, yeah, he's difficult, but he's a high performer. So we'll promote him somewhere else and let him destroy things there, but at least he's out of my side of the shop. Instead of pulling John in and saying, John, you're putting a steel plate on your upward ladder. This is where we need to look, and to take the time as a leader to educate your people in regards to what conflict leadership, I don't say management because I hate the word manage, because if I come up to you and say, Mike, how you doing? And you say, oh, Karl, I'm managing. It's kind of, oh, wow, what's going on? So I love conflict leadership. Having the integrity to say something's not running right. I'm, as a leader, going to take the time, because unless I do, the people will take their time to slowly dive down this vortex of unproductivity, because the creative brain doesn't work when the limbic system's saying there's a conflict. It doesn't work. So we've got to spend time resolving the conflicts. Easy steps. Happy to talk with any of your listeners about the steps. It's just so powerful, Mike.
I think that's a really good framework you shared. And so here's one thing that I want people to hear, and I always encourage people. I have the very, like I said, I have the blessing to be able to sit and have one-on-one conversations with people like you, Karl.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit here with a pen or pencil in my hand and I take notes the whole time, and it's a hot mess, right? I got, over the course of 3 or 4 pages, one here, here's on the back, they're all over the place. And then I compile that into something that's actually legible, readable, and educational. And I want people to write this down when it comes to conflict resolution. And I paraphrase this a little bit, but as you're chatting, the first step is you don't bring people together. You pull them aside one-on-one and get the two sides of the story. That's what you said. Then bring them together. And this is a key point. I think what happens often is leaders or managers, leaders will say, okay, well, let me figure out what happened. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to play principal, and I'm going to get the person, the student, right, to tell me what happened. Then I'm going to get this person to tell me what happened. And we bring them together and we say, okay, now hug and make up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that doesn't work, right? This is what's the one? I saw a meme on the internet where it's got the brother and sister, and they're wearing a giant, like an XL shirt. Have you seen this? And it says,
No.
This is our conflict. The mom puts the brother and sister, and it's 2 younger kids. It's like a meme. They're wearing like a XXL t-shirt, and on the front she's written in marker, it says, this is our conflict resolution t-shirt. Right? It's like, okay, you're going to stick them both in there and then problem solved. And it doesn't work that way. So it's like, you have to be able to listen to the person and have some discernment as the leader to hear what they're saying and know that they're filtering it through their lens, and then listen to the other person, they're filtering it through their lens. When you bring them together, one of the key points that you made was let each person air their grievance without the other one interrupting.
Yes.
Essential. You don't just, I mean, you have to do that in such a way that it's like that other person, while they're sitting listening, has to bite their tongue, because, and I've been in those situations where I just want to shout out, well, that's not true. Right. And it's like, don't just let them say it, because perspective is a funny thing, right? Whatever our perspective says is true, that's what's true in the moment. I was talking to my son the other night. Sorry, I'll get through these and then I'll share this story because it's brief. Then I love these last 2 questions you asked. You said, when they're done airing the stuff, you ask, okay, so where are we now? Where are we? And then where are we headed? And what needs to happen to get there? So it makes people, or I shouldn't say makes people, it allows people that are in those situations to become part of the solution instead of just letting the problem fester. That's what I'm.
And I want to jump on something you said that is a key point. It'll help people remember. Don't play the principal. Don't think that you're going to solve it. It's their problem to solve. And so they'll look to you and say, well, Mike, what should we do? Which sounds on the surface very good, but it is the absolute get out of jail card, because then if it doesn't work, well, we just did what Mike said, it didn't work, we still
Yep.
hate each other. Versus
Yep.
Jane, John, how are you going to resolve this, and how can I support you as a leader? But it's all up to you to do it. And that sometimes we just have to put restraints on ourselves as leaders, because somewhere in the leadership school, we learn the wrong thing of, well, if you're the leader, you're the problem solver. No, you are the facilitator.
Yes.
So I love your principle, the use of the word principle.
Well, here's what's funny. It takes me back in time as I'm listening to you. And I don't know that this is just real life. I'm just going to share it because it is what it is. And I would still use this tactic today, but I've been told by HR I cannot. So we'll do this. There are times I was counseling with an individual, and whether it's conflict resolution or, individual coaching and counseling, I'd be talking with somebody, and like Karl's saying, you want to make them part of the solution. So they say, well, I'm going to do this and this and this. I would have them write their own consultation form. It's more powerful because it's in their hand. Hey, Mike and I talked, and I agreed that I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Here's the solution, right? Here's what the outcome's going to be. So it's not me, quote unquote, writing up the individual. I've been told you can't do that anymore. So whether you can or can't, it is what it is. I'm just telling you, I think that was a great way, because not only does it make them part of the solution, but it's in their own hand. It's in their own conversation. It's coming from their voice. Yep. And it was never me, to be clear, it wasn't like me forcing that on someone. It's like, oh, okay, well, if this is the solution, let's write it down. Here's your paper, start writing. So I would encourage, if anyone's going to attempt that, just run it by HR or check the process. The other thing I was going to share, perspective is an interesting thing, because you'll have two people that are upset at each other and they're both right. And, and because of the way they're handling it, they're both wrong. And so we had this conversation. I had this conversation with one of my kids the other day that we were going through, and I said, well, how are you looking at this thing that you're working on? He says, well, I'm going in and I'm looking at it this way. I said, okay, and how do you think the other individual is looking at the thing? And he goes, well, I assume he's looking at it that way. I said, aha, first problem. No, he's coming in from this other direction looking at it because that's how a customer looks at it. And he goes, oh, I never saw that. So if you have one person looking this way, that's for real. That's my perspective. It's my model of the world. The other person looking from the back side of it is getting a completely different view. They're both right in what they're seeing. They're both wrong in how they're handling it.
And along that line, Roger Fisher and Bill Urey wrote Getting to Yes. But one of the most powerful books is one that's very unknown for them. It's the Getting to Yes workbook. And it is a bigger book. It's probably 150 pages long, but Mike, the whole thing is filled with charts and pages and templates of how to get to what you were talking to your child about the other day, the other person's perspective. Because so many times it's, we like ourselves, we like our opinions, and we do go down the path of, well, I'm sure they'll see this reasonably. And they're thinking, no, Karl's an idiot. I'm not going to see his point of view. And so I've used that book, the Getting to Yes workbook, to just what is the other side thinking? What points would they probably disagree with? How can I help them, again, build the bridge, invite them across, in the words of Bill Urey. But you've got to build the bridge in a way that they will cross it. It can't be my bridge. It's got to be their bridge. One of Urey's best books he just wrote last year, and the book is one word title, Mike. It's called Possible. And if any of your listeners want an incredibly good book on building that bridge, he has a 9-part framework of building conciliation. Again, William Urey, Possible. Amazing.
William Urey, Possible. I'll make sure and put that in the notes for the show as well. So a couple things, reminders, if you're just now joining the show, if you're listening on any of the audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify or any place else. I'm going to give you a quick reminder here. Karl, you can connect with him on LinkedIn. It's Karl Pister, KarlPister. So if you search him on LinkedIn, comes right up. That was how I got connected with him. Easy to find. And it's same thing in the link. It's linkedin.com/n/Karl Pister, all one word, spelled just how I spelled it there. And then also you can check out his business consultancy, executive leadership training and so forth. You can go to coachinggroupinc.com for more info. And certainly you can, send a connection request there. coachinggroupinc.com, all one word. So Karl, as we're winding down, I do have one thing that another question I want to ask. And I'm curious because one of the things that you brought up is, and there's some actionable advice for young leaders. We were even talking before the show. Hey, I got some young leaders coming in that are learning stuff. I got leaders that are, we'll say, experienced leaders, guys in my boat or your boat that we got to remind people of. One of the key things, and you had sort of put this in the email when we were exchanging emails, is talking about for any, and I think this goes for anyone, whether they're young leaders or been at it for a bit, finding a good coach or mentor.
Yeah.
And so can you maybe expand on that a little bit? Do you have coaches and mentors? Because you're a seasoned pro, man. We sat here and have had a great conversation going on, for goodness sake, almost an hour, and the time's flown by. But I think it's easy for people to look and go, well, Karl's got it. I want Karl to be my mentor. He must have it all together and so forth. Do you still have coaches and mentors in your life?
Absolutely. From 8:15 to 9:15 this morning, I was on with my coach, Andy Hall. I've worked with Andy for 5 years. He is a crucial part of my success. And I have a second coach that I use at about 3 times a year. I spend 3 hours with him. So about 9 to 12 hours every year in a think tank environment, Paul Martinelli out of Florida. And I've used Paul now since early 20s, Andy since early 20s. I cannot imagine running my business without that. This morning we went wall to wall on our time. We were going over some ad copy that I'm putting together, going over some larger strategic issues. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I look at my calendar on a regular basis, seeing the next time I meet with Paul down in Florida in another 3 weeks. It's absolutely essential. If you look, just one quick example, I know we're up against time here. Scotty Scheffler right now, one of the best golfers in the world, probably the best right now. His putting a couple of years ago, he was ranked 160th on the tour in putting. He was losing 2 to 3 strokes a round due to his putting. He finds this coach out of Britain who straightens his putting around. And I think at the British Open that he won by 4 strokes, he was nearly flawless on putting. So he won the Masters. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people would say, well, geez, you won the Masters, you're good, not Scheffler, because he knew there were still things he could refine. And all of us have that putting in our individual professional lives that needs that outside perspective of, gee, Mike, your grip, symbolically here is a little off. You're doing this, you're doing that. Highly recommend that people look for the coach. So
what should someone do when looking for a coach? What are a few, this could be a full show in itself. So no, hey, listen, we're going to pack an hour long potential conversation into 3 minutes. But serious. And again, there's not really a cap for time. So it's just one of those, as far as communicating with listeners. I'm curious, when you say yes, definitely for coaching, I'm definitely for coaching. If I'm somebody that's in leadership, new or old, and I say, okay, well, they said I should get a coach, what should I be looking for, Karl?
Most importantly, well, first, how to even find one. Ask your colleagues. Many of them have coaches. Up the line in your organization, many organizations are requiring that their senior VP and up team have regular coaching. So if you have someone in that chain of command, ask Jane, who's a great VP, Jane, who do you use for your leadership development? And she'll give you a couple of names. Many organizations have organizations they contract with that are good coaches. I would definitely get someone who is certified. Coaching right now is pretty unregulated. So International Coach Federation, ICF, is a certification that's somewhat of a gold standard because it requires ongoing training, strong code of ethics. So word of mouth, who has had success with a coach? Could they recommend that person? Is the person certified and trained? And then it comes down to this kind of fluffy, and I wish I could be more defined on it. But as you're talking to this person, what's your gut feeling? Are they listening? Are they asking good questions? Or are they just talking about what you should do? If it's the latter, it's probably not going to be a good fit. But when you walk away thinking, yeah, I think when I walk away, when I walked away at 3 hours ago with Andy, it was, well, that was worth my time. Literally, I have a whole page of notes that will help me in these projects I'm working on.
Sure.
Sometimes it's writing down my own thoughts in response to a question he asked. Other times it's, Karl, if you thought about this, ABC, and it's, well, no, nope. So those go down, and, as soon as I get some free time, probably tomorrow, I'm going to be typing up the notes. I keep solid notes of every single coaching session I've had because I go back and I look at them.
Well, and I think that's one of the keys too. So I picked out 3 or 4 things here. You said, "Hey, look, ask people." Obviously, you can look for folks online. I think you're the second or third person that's brought up ICF, and I think that's valuable because, again, in mass, most anyone can go and say, "Hey, I'm a coach," and certainly like myself, I'm willing to coach people in leadership. I would classify myself more as a mentor. Like, hey, I can sit and I can sit in with the person and so forth. But as far as like defined coaching, I think that's a really valuable point. ICF. I love the gut feeling because, and here's why. When you said, hey, you gotta see how you're feeling with the person, because there's not a one size fits all coach, right? And so I'll ask this question sometimes, and it's not meant to be like a trick question or anything, but I'll say, hey, what should someone look for this? Every once in a while, this question comes up. What should I look for in a mentor? What should I look for in a coach? What should I look for in this? And as we want to think it's easy that, well, it's these 5 steps. And if they have these 5 steps filled out, that meets the checklist and that's a win, right? But the reality is, like, what do you need coaching on? Do you need coaching on your communication? Do you need coaching on connecting with people? Do you need coaching on listening? Like, you got to pay attention and so forth. Do you need more of a life coach, or do you need, there's different disciplines, I guess, and things that would be important. So there's not a one size fits all. So as you're having that communication and going back and forth, I think I loved your response, Karl, where you're like, hey, you gotta see how you feel. Are they listening to you? Are they paying attention? Or are they, predetermining, well, here's what you do. Here's what you do. Yeah. There's a term for that, by the way. If someone's offering diagnosis without doing the questioning, it's a malpractice, right?
That was my next word. Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
So, all right. Well, hey, we're coming down to the tail end, man. Karl, thank you. Do me a favor. You have any? I'm going to share obviously your links again here, but if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to take us out with, I'll give you a moment to collect those.
Absolutely. And my leadership maxim comes from Tom Peters, one of the best leadership consultants the world has known. He wrote the book, In Search of Excellence, back in the 80s, with a co-author. He's a former McKinsey consultant. Mm-hmm. If you take nothing else away from our time today, it's the Peters 5. Find great people, hire them, find out what they need, get it for them, get out of their way. Integrity counts, listening counts, character counts. And at the end of the day, if you can mix that with the Peter's 5 of truly, John, what do you need? Get it for them. And then, John, I'm here to support. I'll check in occasionally. Go for it. That's why I hired you. It's a no-fault formula.
I love it, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Karl Pister, thank you so much for joining me on the Leadership Toolkit today. Just a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited to recap the show and stuff, because I always go back through and watch and write the stuff, and just you had so much good stuff to share. So absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate you.
Great to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity, Mike.
Absolutely. If you would hang out for just a minute, and I'll go ahead and take us out.
Okay.
So ladies and gentlemen, that's going to bring us to a close for this episode of the Leadership Toolkit. As always, a couple of asks, if I may ask of you. One, I would encourage you, connect with Karl on LinkedIn. Check out his website, Coaching Group Inc. You just got a glimpse of what Karl has to offer. And as far as like on the business side, I'm so blessed that I have people like Karl that have connected with me and are willing to come on and share their wealth and knowledge, just the things that they've seen, the things that they've done, what works, and then, you know, sometimes what doesn't. So just a real blessing to interact and have people like Karl on the show. So here's a couple of asks, folks. One, do me a favor. If you're watching the show and you enjoyed it, throw some thumbs up on the show. Please make sure and share it on your social platforms, because that is something that triggers the algorithm, whether you're YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're watching and tuning in from. That will help the show grow, because we want to get it out to more folks. Like, the more people that are trying to learn leadership and navigate that, we want to be able to help with that influence in a positive way. And then also, most importantly, rather than just blanket bombing and saying, oh, well, I threw some thumbs up on it, Mike, and it was, you know, hopefully it was good. If you know somebody that needs to hear this message, be deliberate in sharing it with them. That's the most important thing you can do. That's the best gift you can give somebody. And that's not about me. It's not about Karl. It's not about you. You just go, man, there was this tidbit of information, or maybe it's the whole show. Send that to somebody, because that's how you grow the people that you surround yourself with. That's how you grow yourself. It's how you grow others. So just do that favor for me this week. As always, I'll be sending out, if you want to connect and get onto my newsletter, you can check that stuff out. I have leadtheteam.net, and you can go to the leadershiptoolkit.com and connect there. And otherwise, until we speak next week, stay great, everybody. We'll talk soon.